live. Gonna do, not sure how long I'll be on here for. Depends how long I feel good for. But yeah, um, I queued up more videos today. Last time I did a stream, I didn't queue up enough videos, so it was kind of like difficult to find them on the fly. But there should be a bunch of good stuff that I have. This is really the first video I want to talk about because this has been an idea that I've been thinking about for I want to say a long time, but I only discovered this concept in itself recently, and it's just been a lot of the focal point of how I've been viewing the world. So I think it's very important. But this idea is weird because you have people that know this and then accept it and see it as a good thing. I don't necessarily see it as a good thing. I don't know exactly his take on it, but I saw the first, I want to say, minute or so of this, and I enjoyed the way that he was describing it. So that's going to be something I do in the future where I actually go through the videos I'm going to show so I at least have a rough sense of what's happening. Should pull up the chat just in case anyone's here, but I don't know if anyone's here yet. I feel like Friday I should probably do these streams earlier because I don't know if people want to watch this like instead of going out on Fridays. I certainly would, but I don't know about other people. I feel like other people have more lives than I do. But yeah, let's get into this interesting idea.
Hegel constructed his philosophy of history.
So Hegel is essentially one of the most popular philosophers of his time. He was 1850s-ish, I want to put him at. He was popular at the time Schopenhauer was alive, and Schopenhauer absolutely hated Hegel, and he thought that he basically taught nonsense. And I mean, in certain ways, you can break down every philosophical system because they all have their holes, and that's why there's still philosophers today that talk about whatever. It's one of those things you can always critique. It's really easy to find the flaws and stuff, but it's very difficult to replace it with something better. And this is something that we see coming to a head today, where there's a lot of media, there's a lot of things you can say about how bad the media is, but nothing good's coming out of it because there's no actually inspired creatives anymore. But
Was through this process called the dialectic. And the dialectic works like this. In all the different areas of human experience that we have, such as art, philosophy, theology, music, economics, physics, astronomy, whatever, we find a process taking place that involves tensions that are overcome in the plane or on the plane of history.
so what he said is super interesting. It's a very good way of putting it. It's much better than I can do it. Every time I explain something, it's through poetry or metaphor. So like if that's your thing, it could be difficult to grasp what I'm saying, but if it is, it makes it very easy. But think of it as like a force of nature. So like without light, what is dark? Without dark, what is light? Like it's only the existence of one end that creates the other and vice versa. And what Hegel is loosely trying to do is he's trying to create a system out of Heraclitus's sort of idea of flux, idea of change, idea of this fire that kind of consumes everything, this idea of entropy. I read a quote of Hegel that really, I think, summarized a lot of what he has to say. I really need to read him, but I'm like I flipped through the book I have of his. I think I have the Phenomenology of Spirit, and like I know it's going to be very like dense and not super fun to read, or at least that's the impression I get. But I read a quote, and essentially he said that there's not a single Heraclitus quote that I have not adopted as my own. And very luckily for me, I have a good understanding of Heraclitus, so I can grasp what he's saying. But essentially, he's trying to take these ideas and put them into a system, and a system that makes the world make sense. Because it's very easy to think about Heraclitus in an abstract sense. If you don't know who he is, very very simply, Heraclitus is the man that said, "You never step in the same river twice." Essentially, that everything changes, everything is in flux, everything is in some way dying and becoming something new. And when you start applying these two systems, it's very difficult to think about because, think about countries, think about, certain businesses, think about, your favorite sports team, like whatever it is, it's changing. Whatever it is, it's either slowly being born into something new or slowly dying, and you will forget about it. And what Hegel's trying to do is to apply these forces in a systematic way that we can make sense of.
And it goes like this. Somebody will come up with a thesis, like Parmenides, everything is being. And that thesis invariably evokes an antithesis, that is, a theory that is in polar tension to it, such as we saw with Heraclitus and Parmenides. One said everything is being, the other one said no, everything is becoming. So now the progress of philosophical development is stifled, and there's a blockade here because you can't get past this tension.
So what he's going to say next is very important. So we have one side and then we have the other side. And you would think that these two sides are enemies. But in fact, they're not because they build each other up. Think about it, a very easy way to put it this is sports rivalry. You have one side that really loves this team and you have one side that hates this team. So the side that hates this team, in fact, makes the team that loves this team even stronger because they see people trying to tear them down. They see people saying that your team sucks, your quarterback is terrible, this, that, oh, you're awful, you're this, you're that, and then the other side has to meet that energy and match that energy and respond. And it's this ever present kind of duality of forces that builds and builds and builds and builds. You can see it. I mean, just think about politics. The easiest way to think about it is politics. But I hate politics. It's so boring. And this idea shows you how it's all just the same thing. But
Until somebody comes along and resolves the problem by creating what is called a synthesis. And we saw that, for example, when Plato sought to reconcile Parmenides and Heraclitus by creating his synthetic philosophy of the two realms and so on. And then that synthesis becomes the new thesis, and invariably that thesis provokes what? Another antithesis, such as we saw with Aristotle.
so I didn't. This is very interesting because I never like I haven't read enough of Hegel to understand that this is a ever growing and ever changing idea, but it is very true. I think you pit two sides against each other and eventually make them find common ground on certain things, and then you create the next issue. It's very this is a very ingenious system when you really think about it, and it kind of describes not just human nature, nature to a T.
Challenging Plato. Now, then what happens is that this creates a roadblock for a certain period of time until somebody else comes along and takes ideas from both of these sides, works them out together, and creates another synthesis. Now, of course, what happens with that synthesis is that new paradigm or that new system or that new philosophical viewpoint becomes the basis for a new thesis. And what does that do? It provokes what, Roger? What would you guess? Another what? Antithesis, that's right. You got it. And
So I think Hegel saw this as an evolution, but I don't necessarily think it's an evolution. I think it's in some way just a repetition. I think all ideas are cyclical, and I think all ideas in some way have already been expressed. It's just they're not expressed with the same context that you're expressing them with.
as you can see, I'm running out of blackboard space here, but this then is resolved in another synthesis, and we can see this pattern go on and on and on. Well, it's much more complicated than this simple illustration that I've just given to you here. with respect to philosophy, but you also have the relationship between philosophy, between religion, for example, and art. And there's a tension there, which is then resolved in philosophy. And then you have conflict between philosophy and science, which is then resolved in political theory and so on. And so you have a whole grid of these dialectics working themselves out. And what Hegel is looking for.
So this is very interesting. I never thought of it as there's hierarchies of them as well. I'm glad I picked this video. He's doing a very good job
In the
explaining it.
process of history is what he called the Aufgehoben. Now, that's just a fancy German word for something's being elevated to the next level. You rise above the current dilemma into the next stage of development where you
What this reminds me of is the technological singularity, which is th- this idea. It used to be, I feel like, much more popular, and I feel like it's back to a head with all this talk of AI and all this talk of these AIs becoming so powerful that they're going to take everything from human beings, and what's going to be left when these sorts of things happen. And time will only tell. I think it's much farther away than we think it is, but
transcend the current difficulty and resolve it into a new thesis. That's the experience. The synthesis is the experience of the Aufgehoben.
that's a very good video. This was Ligonier Ministries. I think that's how you say that. This video of Viktor Frankl. I don't think I've ever watched any interviews by him, so this should be fun to go through. But Viktor Frankl's philosophy is, it could be summed up through a few quotes, and I'll give the quotes. But basically, what it is if you have a purpose, then you have meaning. That your entire life is meant to have purpose, but when we are divorced from purpose, then we give up. Then there's no meaning to find in this existence. And when you can align yourself with something that's worthwhile for you, then you can find any sort of reason to endure. And the quote is, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger" by Nietzsche. That's essentially one of the founding principles of what he believed.
You quote Nietzsche quite a bit. His
That's so weird.
line, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." What do you think he meant by that?
He who has a why to live by can bear almost any how. So what's the reason for you going on? What's the reason for you pushing? What's the reason for you become something better? Why are you enduring this hardship? Why are you enduring this pain? And for a lot of people, there is no clear reason. For a lot of people, there is no reason to keep pushing. There is no reason to keep going on. And that's why it's so easy to give up. But if you are doing it for a definite purpose, then it's much easier to endure that hardship. It's much easier to endure that pain.
What I think that
What do you think he meant by that?
the same as I am intended to convey to my readers and students, that the vision of a meaning ahead of someone, a meaning in wait for someone, to be fulfilled by someone, that this contributes most than anything else under equal other circumstances for survival.
Meaning is the most important thing in our lives?
Certainly, because a
Meaning is the most important thing in our lives. And I want you to really think about this idea, because the more we can align with something that is, and I'm not saying meaning in the sense of like you have to go out into the world and conquer it. You have to go out into the world and be Alexander or Caesar. But I'm talking about meaning, like deep in your heart, what is the thing that you want to do? What inspires you? How can you give back? How can you benefit other people's lives the most? What's your passion? In what way can you develop yourself that you could wake up and go to work and enjoy it? And it doesn't even have to be that bold. It doesn't even have to be that much. It could be that, you know what, I have a difficult job. It's something that I can do. It's something that I'm good at, but it means that my family can have a good life. It's things like that. It's finding that deeper layer of humanity that we seem to lose in this consumerist world that we exist in. Because, now when we think of a job, now when we think of doing something difficult, it's always a sacrifice in order to keep up with the Joneses. It's always a sacrifice in order to flex how important we are or how much money we make, or I have to buy this car so that I can finally feel like I mean something to this world. And all of those pursuits are hollow. All of those pursuits are for someone else. And the sad reality is it's not even someone else. It's what we collectively think brings somebody else value. But in truth, everybody has their own moral compass. Everyone has their own guiding system. And if we would just listen to it, then we could find everything that we would ever need to look for.
What I call a will to meaning, the wish to.
Will to meaning. I'm so tired of all of these like will to power, will to live, will to meaning. I think it's all, I don't know, whenever you try to simplify these concepts, I think it makes it very difficult to understand. In fact, I don't even like, because I feel like Nietzsche's will to live is or will to power is a pretty strong idea, but just the idea itself is so polluted by the way we understand the word power that it kind of distorts the interpretations of it. Same thing with will to live. I think maybe it's just the translation. Maybe it's just me not speaking German that really alters the way that I view these ideas, or maybe it's just the collective ideas about Schopenhauer and Nietzsche that alter it. But I'm interested to see what he's going to coin.
To find and to fulfill meaning is the basic motivation in human beings.
Well, this certainly runs counter to much of the determinist notions that are being bandied around these days as man is a machine, man is a computer, man is a product of instincts.
So again, we were just talking about the dialectic, and it's very funny to like see that I'm about to use a dialectic. There's almost this divide between materialism and spiritualism. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but think about the position that man is a product of his circumstances, that everything that happens to you is because something has done something wrong to you versus you determine your circumstances. And it really is a combination of both of them. Think about it, left versus right, eastern hemisphere versus western hemisphere of your brain. Is that what it is? I forget what the terms are, but left brain versus right brain, these sorts of ideas, it's always the combination, it's always the balance of things in your life that you need to understand, and you need to sort of implement more balance in order to find what it is that you're missing out in life.
Man is something like a rat in experiments, psychological experiments. Of course, you're right, but not only against the so-called deterministic concepts of man, but also regarding the motivational theories of certain psychotherapeutic systems.
Let's talk for a minute about logotherapy, which
So logotherapy is Viktor Frankl's school of therapy, and essentially what it is trying to assign meaning to your life, finding finding your why. That's the whole idea of his philosophy.
arose out of this notion of a search for meaning.
Logotherapy, as one among other types of psychotherapy, is, we may say, a meaning-centered psychotherapy. Inasmuch particularly as logotherapy sees a human being not predominantly determined, not to say dominated, by the will to pleasure, as you were mentioning, nor by the will to power along the lines of Adlerian teachings.
I am not sure how popular logotherapy is, but Adler is one of the top. There's really three names in the genesis of philosophy you will come across. It's Freud, Jung, and Adler. Not too familiar with Adler. I'm the least familiar with him. I'm the most familiar with Jung, but interesting to know that it comes from the idea of will to power, because that makes a lot of sense when you think about At least what I know about Adler and philosophy, psychology. I was about to say philosophy. I guess there's a like I don't know why there's a distinction between philosophy and psychology because really psychology comes from a mix of hypnosis and philosophical principles and working those two out in a way to kind of tackle your psyche. So it's this weird like I don't know. I don't know if it's a catch-all term. I don't even know if I should be thinking about these things that deeply or just move on. But this is interesting because what he's saying is that these other philosophical or these other psychological systems don't direct you to what really matters. They direct you to, oh, you need to enjoy your life more. Oh, you need to, in some way. So essentially, what the will to power is, if you don't know what it is the will to power is the need to kind of exact yourself on this world. And it's not insidious in the way that we think about power now today. I think power has a very bad connotation to it where it kind of oh I'm gonna force my will onto you. I'm going to make you and the people around you do as I say because I need to feel this sort of strength over you. It's not that. It's the need to master something. It's the need to be good at something. It's the need to in some way become proficient. And you could take it in a negative sense as you could take everything in a negative sense and you could use your will to dominate somebody, or you could just do it in terms of, oh, I have the skill and I want to get as good as I possibly can at it. That's broadly speaking the will to power. But what Frankl is saying is it's even more it needs to be even more directed by that. I need to have the means to have meaning. I need to in some way be able to direct myself to something purposeful. Because there's a whole lot of people in this world that are very successful, that have everything that the world could ever give them, but they are still unhappy because there's no depth to it. There's nothing aside from the hollow accomplishment of worldly achievements.
but basically, fundamentally, by a will to meaning. That is to say, the desire, the impulse to find, to discover in life, or better to say, in each life situation, concrete life situation, confronting someone, the desire to find a meaning therein and to go on to fulfill it.
I was very intrigued. One of the most surprising things I've read recently was that you said that when you talked to European students, only 40% said they had suffered this sort of inner void, and yet 81% of American students experience the same thing.
This was
So I think America is kind of a product of its own success in a way. And I don't know when this interview was, but Viktor Frankl was, I have to dance around it. It sucks that I have to say it in this way. There's a helicopter outside, so sorry for that. Um, Viktor Frankl experienced the worst of humanity. He was in the 1940s. German work camps will say, I hate that I can't say history. I hate that I can't say what happens, but uh, it's very Orwellian. But he experienced some of the worst of humanity, and he was able to find a reason to live. He was able to find a reason to hope. He was able to find something inside of him that said, "Keep going, keep pushing." Your family might not make it, but you need to make it to turn this experience into something positive, to take this experience and to better people's lives. And that's what he did. If you read, why am I blanking on the name? Man's Search for Meaning. This is exactly what you will get from it. But I think America is a product of its own success because America was able to create this economy that created mass amounts of wealth through, consumer manufactured goods and all sorts of stuff like that. But because we had so much excess, because we had so much more than we needed, it becomes difficult to appreciate the finer things. And this is where you have a kind of crossover with the transcendentalists such as Henry David Thoreau and really what Thoreau got through his experience of going out and to live in the woods for 2 years was that when you exist off of the basics, then you have gratitude, then you can express gratitude. But when you have excess, when you have more, when you live beyond your means, when you have a needless end to consume and you don't appreciate the things you have, it is very, very difficult to live a life of meaning. It's very difficult to live a life of purpose. You know, we have these ideals of such as the American dream and these sorts of things, but really what it means is just chasing consumer debt, chasing debt so that we can put up the appearance of we have a good life. And there's not really a depth to it. There's not really anything beyond the surface level appearance of things. And you certainly see this. Like there's if you live in America today, I don't know how it is in different countries, but there's a very, very, very poor sense of community. There's not much interaction between you and your neighbor. Like, regardless of wherever I've lived in a lot of different places in this country, and there was never really a friendliness. There was never really I got to know this person and they became part of my life and they became my friend and I went over to their house for, I needed this, I needed sugar, I needed this. Like, you know what I mean? There's no depth to the life today. And that's really what Frankl is talking about, that there's this void of meaning.
Now
decades ago.
we think of it just the opposite. We think of the Europeans as being buried under this existential dread and sense of purposelessness, and Americans as being optimistic and upbeat.
However it might be,
I wonder if this has to do with the fact that World War II and World War I were fought in Europe and people had to endure the hardship of that. And it's a reality that like without hardship, people can't appreciate the good times. And obviously there were soldiers that went over there, but Europe had to deal with the effects of World War II because their cities were leveled and they had to deal with the aftermath of it. Whereas the Americans kind of came back and went through this golden era of economic development and prosperity and all sorts. I wonder if that's what, there'll never be a study, there'll never be anything that concur that, but I wonder if that's a re
whether the ones or the others uh, are suffering more or less, respectively, from this existential vacuum. The ones who seem to suffer less should not look at the others with contempt, but look at the others with compassion and look for anything possible to help the others.
Now, this void manifests itself as
In apathy, in boredom, lack of initiative, lack of interest in the world.
it's so this void is something that's definitely more present today than it ever has been because I think you work your whole life and then you get the things and it feels nothing. There's no point. It's a rat race, as a lot of people say. And why is that? It's because we're chasing things that really aren't our meaning. It's not really our purpose. It's not really something that in any way will give our life any sort of depth. And this is why I'm always an advocate of developing your passions, developing your hobbies, developing an interest outside of your day to day, finding room for creativity, finding room to sublimate your more creative faculties into a thing that you can get good at, and a thing that you can derive some sort of happiness from.
Or initiative in changing something within the world for the better. This frustration is a proof of the existence of a will to meaning. Unless we were imbued by will to meaning, by the wish to find meaning and discover and fulfill meaning in life, we never would be able to experience an inner void. So this is, in a way, also something positive.
Now, you've listed 3 types.
So it's interesting. So he's saying that because people are feeling this void, it's proof that we need more. It's proof that there needs to be some other meaning aside from these old ideals, such as the will to power or the will to live. Uh, it's very interesting, and it comes back to this idea that human beings they once the point of life for human beings was once survival, was to procreate, was to yourself survive so that the human race could keep on going. But we've almost conquered this primal need, this primal sort of aspect of life, and now what do we have? Now what do we face? And this is what Schopenhauer was trying to tackle. This is what Nietzsche was trying to tackle, and this is what Frankl himself is trying to tackle.
Types of values: creative values, experiential values, and attitudinal values.
And you may find a meaning. The average man, the man on the street or the woman on the street, may find a meaning day by day in doing a deed, in creating a rich man, the man on
Let me.
So this is in a way also something positive.
Now you've listed
I'm interested to see what these three types of values were. I didn't hear it the first time. I heard creative, but I wanna hear all three so we could talk about in the case.
3 types of values: creative values, experiential values, and attitudinal values.
And you
Creative values, experimental values, and attitudinal values. Okay, so I'm assuming this is you need to in some way find creative meaning. This could be something as an easy example could be you write before you go to bed, or you write stories, or you write nonfiction articles, or you write, um, just journal in your journal. Could be something like go to the gym and express your body in a physical manner. It could be something as train jujitsu and get better at a skill, get better at a martial art. That's the emphasis on the art in that aspect. Um, Experiential, I'm sure it's go out into the world and do things, go out into the world and maybe for you it's travel, or for other people it's to do difficult things, go out into the woods and camp, or undertake some physical tasks that you didn't otherwise think you could do. And attitudinal is probably, I don't know. I wonder what that is.
may find a meaning. The average man, the man on the street or the woman on the street, may find a meaning day by day in doing a deed, in creating a work.
So every great mind, their summation of the solution to life is creativity. Every single person that you stumble upon, every single person that you study, to some degree, their solution is creative expression, okay? And I can't emphasize this point enough. I try to say it as much as possible, but Rumi, Jung, Freud, Henry David Thoreau, Emerson, William Blake, Khalil Gibran, Borges, Kafka, Camus, uh, Frankl. The list goes on and on and on. But every single mystic, every single poet, every single philosopher, every single great mind who has ever lived, who has ever given advice to people, has said that your path to salvation is through creativity, is through creative expression. And I really want to emphasize this point because what he's saying is very important, but I don't think he's stating it in enough conviction.
And
That's the creative.
creative. And in experiencing something, the beauty, the truth as a researcher, or the good in dealing with people as a teacher.
So he's not even saying that you have to do it yourself. It's enough to consume great art. It's enough to read a book such as, you know, Dante's Divine Comedy, or read something such as William Blake, read some poetry, or be inspired by a great movie, that sort of thing.
Teacher or whatsoever.
There's an extraordinary moment in Man's Search for Meaning where you talk about being in one of the Nazi camps, and all of you going out to look at a sunset. Is that
Exactly. This is a
experiential?
paradigm.
That was the most striking part of Man's Search for Meaning is that Viktor Frankl is undergoing horrific torture. I can't remember the time frame he was there, but he's experiencing some of the most awful conditions that human beings have ever experienced, and yet he's finding time for the little thing. He's enjoying when he's able to sleep in. He's enjoying when he's allowed to warm his hands by the fire, and he has a short reprieve from a vicious cycle of work.
Of experiential values, of finding a meaning in experiencing without doing anything, without achieving or accomplishing anything, but just in giving oneself to the immediate experience of something, say, beautiful going on in the world.
Okay.
This is the second avenue. But there is also a
Okay, so what he's saying is even more interesting than I thought it would be. So it's not even just experiencing things, it's allowing yourself to enjoy the experience. Like, think about think about your favorite thing to do. And there's certainly been a time when, let's say you love playing video games, but you're not having fun playing video games, and it's because you're thinking about the rest of your life. You're thinking about the things you haven't done. You're thinking about everything that you need to do instead of losing yourself in the activity. Because our best times is when we lose ourselves and allow ourselves to just enjoy things. You know, you go to the gym and you're thinking about what you have to do afterwards, so your workout doesn't feel as good. Whereas that Saturday that you wake up and you don't have anything to do and you go to the gym and you're there for a few hours, you get the best workout because you just did it. You allowed yourself to enjoy it. That's what he's saying. There's something really genius in what he's saying. It's just I didn't think he was going to take it in that way.
is another aspect of experiential values. Excuse me, not only experiencing something, but also experiencing someone. More than that, experiencing another human being in his or her very uniqueness. And it is the main attribute of a human being that he is a person in contrast to any animal. He is a person.
Think about like a very good conversation. We've all had those conversations late at night with a friend or, even with an older person, and they're telling you about their experience, and there's something in their eye, there's something in their cadence, there's something that they're conveying to you. There's an experience, there's a life, and you see that person in a whole new way, and for the rest of your life you will always look at them differently. That's really what he's talking about. It's not having any preconceived notions. It's not having any judgment. It's just accepting that person as they are and allowing them to show themselves to you. It's a very great experience.
A person is always
I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure if anything I'm saying makes sense, but
something absolutely unique, irrepeatable in the evolution of the cosmos, as it were, incomparable with any other human being. And this uniqueness can be got hold of solely by a loving person, because he not only sees the essence, but also the potentials in the beloved.
did this chap find meaning in life? Yes, he did. He did. He experienced some of the worst of humanity and was able to turn it into a positive. So I think he did. When we tackling some romance or sci-fi, I mean, the thing about romance is like, I don't think any of it is very well done. Like, I don't think anything reaches the heights of the Greek tragedies or Shakespeare. And I know I'm not well versed enough in either of those to kind of talk about them or say something interesting that hasn't been said. And to me, it's just not like, it's not one of the subjects that like keeps me up at night and I think about all day. Like, a lot of it sucks that I'm obsessed with like things that are kind of like weird and not popular. But I talk about the things I want to talk about. Sci-fi is something I'm slowly getting into, but I think sci-fi is there's always something interesting about sci-fi in that it makes predictions about humanity that end up becoming true. I think Dune is perhaps the greatest example of this, but like how much can I talk about Dune and how much can I make people interested in it without having read it? And maybe that's not a concern that is actually in any ways valid, but that's like, you know what I mean? Like I want to talk about ideas we can all talk about in a sense. I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking too much about it, but maybe we talk about Dune at some
Person, thereby, as I put it before, promoting him, alleviating it to reach out to attain this potential and to fulfill and thereby actualize also himself, but not by preaching self-actualization. It's nonsense. Self-actualization can only fall into your lap automatically once that you have fulfilled.
It's like that Game of Thrones scene where the grandfather says to the boy king, "You have to say you're king. You have no authority to hold the crown." When you have to tell somebody, when you have to justify your existence, it means that you're very far from that. Think about the people online saying, "I'm an alpha male, I'm this, I'm that." Like, I always cringe whenever I hear someone have to give themselves a title. Like, it's like Jordan. Like, Jordan never called himself the greatest of all time. Everyone else does. And that's why, like, in a certain regard, like LeBron, just in my book, I don't know about your book, but like the fact that he needs to compare himself to Jordan makes it so that he isn't as good. You know what I mean? Beg to differ about romance. You were only playing. Wow, just bullying me. I mean, what's good romance now though? Like, I don't know. I'm just so skeptical of anything that comes out nowadays because it's also boring and everything's just like you really know people's opinions because the propaganda machine is just so effective that like you can really guess a lot of people's takes on a lot of things and I don't even want to sift through the garbage. Like I don't even want to sift through the stuff that's coming out because I think all of the sensibilities and all the philosophies and everything that's been imbued into us from a very young age just it's so I don't care. I've read enough of it. I've studied enough of it. I don't need more nonsense philosophy. And I know there's definitely really good books that are still coming out, but it's just I've just ruined it. Or other
A
ruined it for me.
concrete meaning than the best of a situation. Then you actualize yourself as a byproduct.
Let's talk about the third set of values, which is the attitudinal, the idea of choosing how to respond to suffering.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure where he was gonna go with it, so I didn't talk about it. But think of the Emerson idea of every every instance, every experience has both equal parts good and equal parts bad. So let's say you get the job of your dreams. Well, maybe there was a job that was just a little bit better that you're now not going to apply for or get because you took this one. You know, in certain ways, everything's a victory and defeat, and it's how we respond and how we focus and how we internalize our experiences that go to show what we're going to do next. As Emerson said, every wall is a door.
Choosing the attitude.
Yes.
Yeah. If there is no possibility in a given situation to fulfill the meaning of a situation by giving oneself to the experience of beauty and so forth, nor to, if you have lost the capability to do your job, to do your work, even then there is an ultimate possibility to find and fulfill meaning.
It's the case with every book, to be frank. There's not really any original thought left in this day and age. I agree, but you can retread ideas in different contexts. Interesting. I mean, like all ideas are kind of like most stories are derivative of Shakespeare. What's that? Like The Notebook is kind of like a Greek tragedy in a sense. Like the way it ends, like it's a bittersweet ending, but it pulled on your heartstrings. Like I mean, there's ways to tell good stories. There's ways to say ideas in interesting ways, but I don't think people have enough appreciation for the old way of things. Wow, you're just getting here just when human. That's crazy. Can't believe you. You got a girlfriend? Good for you. Every day with you, there's something new.
Meaning. Not only the ultimate, it is even the potential to fulfill the deepest meaning, to attain the highest values. By your approach to the situation a tragic or triste situation confronting you.
You said that
So think of the idea. I love that this is Nietzsche's quote because it's so funny how it's just in a Britney Spears song. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Think of this idea. It's that life is giving you a certain set of challenges that you need to face so that the next challenge that you face, you're ready for. That amor fati, love your fate, love everything that happens to you because it makes you who you are. You know, without your setbacks, without your failures, you don't have any sort of ground to hold yourself on. You don't have any sort of experience to push yourself to be better. You're
in
moving in
part of the
with it.
initial shock
Why?
of being put in a death
Isn't
camp
that kind of fast?
was there was ultimately an acceptance that we knew we knew we had nothing to lose except our ridiculously naked lives. Is that the situation that they're in?
In a way,
Is this when you make the choice of how you're going to, your last value choice is how to react to the situation?
you stood there naked, with nothing you could have had. But all the more what counted and mattered was what you were, being rather than having, possessing.
How you respond to situations are more important than who you are in the situation.
Anything, or the being. So what
Is this like a Nigerian prince scam that you're falling for? That's what this sounds like to me.
counted was what you make out of this situation, with what attitude you adopt in the given situation. And there is a multitude, a wealth of possible attitudes to how to approach it. So you have to decide.
The ultimate, I would take it, attitudinal value challenge that we all share is how we're going to face death.
It's so cringy to me how afraid of death people are. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't in some way like fear it, but like there's people that have ignored the fact that they're gonna die one day. And they've never thought about it and it's never become any sort of idea so that when it comes for someone that they love, they can't accept it. If you want to see how people haven't dealt with death, go to a funeral and see how they respond. And I'm not saying that like you shouldn't be sad or you shouldn't grieve, but like you know what I mean, where people make it a spectacle and make it about themselves in some sort of fashion or some sort of way. And again, we all grieve in our own ways, but it's very weird how little people have thought about this and how little people have thought about our mortality. But you know, in essence, our mortality gives life any meaning because without our death, then what's the point of life? If you lived forever, then there would be no reason to keep going. There'd be no reason to go out and do anything. You could do it in 1,000 years. You could do it in 2,000 years. Why even get out of bed? Why even go challenge yourself? Why even go push? It's the fact that our time is limited that gives value to the time. You know, Seneca said something very interesting, and he was saying that, you know, as I grow older, so funny because Seneca didn't die of old age, but as you get older, every second becomes more valuable because you have less of them. So the fact that you're spending time with people is really showing that I'm giving you the greatest gift I have, the time, the little time that I've left. And there's something in this that's very inspiring, and there's the juxtaposition that most people feel is the fear and the insecurity that they're going to die.
How do you prepare people for that? How do you prepare yourself for that?
I couldn't prepare anyone else unless I would have prepared myself.
Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning got you through some tough times. Yeah, I wish I read it when I was much younger. Like I feel like if I had this book when I was 15 or 16, like things would have been so much easier. By the time I read it, I didn't really need it as much anymore, but these were all ideas that I kind of picked up through other things, but there's just something with that book that'll stick with you for the rest of your life. Because every time you find yourself complaining about your situations, you think about what Viktor Frankl had to go through and how he was still able to find hope, how he was still able to find little moments that made all of his existence worthwhile. And it's just it's honestly just so impressive how someone could have the fortitude to see the silver lining in such awful circumstances. Your inner child must have found it cathartic, even yeah. No, for sure. I was like, I read the book. I don't even think I put it down until I finished it. It was like I finished it so quick. What's up, HM? Yeah, that's crazy. Both, yeah, that's you must have some crazy.
Because your, if you were a psychiatrist, your patients feel exactly whether or not you are really convinced of what you are teaching and telling them. Now, I'm convinced.
Yeah, it's very, it's so crazy that like you could find like some sort of meaning in it. You could find some sort of experience that like how could you turn such hate and such evil into something so positive? It really baffles you. Nothing much. How about you? I can't complain. Nothing really new going on with me. Hope that all is well with you.
That in contrast to the usual aspect, the albeit sound aspect to life, and more specifically to the past, to life's transitoriness, and this includes that we approach, each of us are approaching death. In contrast to that, I maintain that in the past, nothing is lost, but right on the contrary, everything is stored forever. It is not annihilated by transitoriness, but on the contrary, it is becoming preserved forever. Something you have done can never be undone. Something you have experienced, something you have even experienced.
No, you partially dislocated your knee today? How did that happen? What? What'd you do? What he's saying here is interesting is that like some experience, something you've done will never happen again, and to take solace in that fact. That's I definitely agree with that.
In a negative sense, going through suffering. And if you have, for instance, if you have gone through this suffering, honestly, courageously, and with dignity, who in the world, what in the world can deny, can annihilate this? What you have done has been done forever, in both ways, in a negative as in.
Too much pressure in a not so safe position. What? You like squatting or something? He's ultimately not having a victim mentality or mope about your circumstances. I mean, yeah, that's his whole like belief system. That's really his whole philosophy.
In a positive way. It cannot be undone. And the past is a storehouse of what you have done, what you have experienced, what you have gone through, and what you have done out of all the negative and tragic aspects as even encountered within your life.
I want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to thank you at home for watching.
It was a pretty good video. I have one more video. Let me see how long I've been streaming for. Because it's kind of long. I could definitely skip around through it. I've only been going for 55. I'll go a little longer. But this is Plato's cave allegory. And I chose this video because it's somewhat similar to the Hegelian dialectic that like actually it's not in a certain way, but I see some similarities. Who was that host? I don't know. I don't know if it says. No, it does not say. Somewhere in the comments. This video is from Noetic Films. Look up Viktor Frankl. Self-actualization is not the goal. You'll find it easy. It's 1.8 million views. Profound meaning of Plato's cave allegory. So this is one of Plato's strongest ideas, but I think he doesn't apply it in enough contexts.
Soren Kierkegaard was right. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. It's a fact that for most of our lives, we humans unconsciously bask in ignorance. But sometimes, special people come along to wake us from this state that some would call bliss.
I find Kierkegaard interesting until I actually read him, and it's so boring. I hate it. I want to like Kierkegaard. I like his idea of faith is so interesting and fascinating to me, the idea of the leap of faith. But I can't for whatever reason, for the life of me, I really want to like him. I just can't like I don't like reading him at all. His ideas I think are interesting and fascinating, and I always end up agreeing with them, but it's like one sentence that I'm like, all right, and then 20 pages of nonsense, and I'm just so bored, and I'm like, who are you trying to prove? Are you trying to prove it to yourself, or are you trying to prove it to me because I already bought in? I don't know. You could say that about most philosophy though. Most philosophy, like every philosopher has a few ideas that are interesting, and then they have thousands of pages of just fluff, and I'm like, all right, man, I don't really care that much.
In fact, the myth of the hero who brings wisdom, symbolized by light or fire, in a world of ignorance symbolized by darkness, is as old as humanity itself and can be found in all cultures across works of literature and art. Take, for example, Plato's allegory of the cave. People usually learn about it in school when they make their first contact with the philosophers of old. But most of us are too young and inexperienced to fully understand its profound meaning and teachings until way later in life.
All like the references to the Matrix are just so cringy now. Like, I don't know, it's a good movie, but it's not as deep as like people think it is. Like, there's a lot of movies that have much more interesting ideas in them.
When we start to question the reality that has been programmed into us and to form our own beliefs and values. When this moment comes, having a roadmap for the journey that one has to undertake and becoming aware of the obstacles that may emerge is a thing of utmost importance. And in today's episode, in collaboration with After School, we are going to explore this journey by dissecting Plato's allegory of the cave, its connection to ancient myths, and the
It doesn't really have that much connection to the hero's journey. Never watched it, been a weird procrastination phase. It's good. Like it's one of those movies you'll watch and you're like, this is cool. Like the second and third aren't as good as the first. Um, the third doesn't like the action scene in the third where he's like fighting like all the other like all the Agent Smiths. It's like it doesn't look that good anymore. Like it didn't age that well. Maybe that's the one caveat with it. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying like, dude, all like the red pill, blue pill stuff is so annoying. Whenever I hear someone say red pill this or blue pill that, it's so like cringy. I don't know. I think just when people like when people use like movie references and they become so popular, it just becomes like cringy to me. Does that not bother you too? Like I can obviously separate it, but like it's just all the references just bother me.
ultimate narrative archetype we know as the hero's journey. Plato's allegory of the cave is one of the most influential philosophical concepts ever introduced, encapsulating timeless questions about reality, knowledge, perception, and enlightenment. Located in Plato's seminal work, The Republic, the allegory of the cave serves as a metaphorical narrative depicting the human condition's journey from ignorance to enlightenment. Embedded with
I don't think he goes far enough with the cave allegory, and I'll let him say it before I don't even know if it's criticism. I think it's just he doesn't go far enough with it.
Within this allegory are profound implications about the nature of knowledge and the transformative journey of gaining wisdom. The narrative echoes through numerous myths and philosophical discourses, bearing a particularly striking resemblance to the Greek myth of Prometheus and the archetypal hero's journey. In Plato's profound allegory, he uses the
I don't, I don't know. I don't really agree with it that much,
metaphor of
but
a subterranean cave to illustrate a group of prisoners.
because the Prometheus myth is like about self-sacrifice, and it's like essentially the Prometheus myth is that this I can't remember if he's a god or a man. I'm sure it depends on the story, but essentially this guy gives fire to humanity against the god's wishes and is eternally punished for it. And it's sort of like it's worth sacrificing this for the sake of people. It's not really what the cave is. Cave is a commentary on how you could break, like you can never convince other people
Sequestered from
you
birth.
have to believe.
Their world is one of complete isolation, devoid of any contact with the external universe. Bound by chains and restricted in their movements, they are compelled to face the barren cave wall, deprived of the ability to swivel their heads or see beyond their immediate environment. An enigmatic fire positioned behind them flickers dimly, barely illuminating their dreary surroundings. Periodically, individuals walk behind the prisoners, parading various figures. These are representations of animals, plants, and an array of other artifacts. These objects, when passing by the fire, cast elongated and distorted shadows on the stone wall before the prisoners.
So I'm pretty sure you're knowing where this is gonna go.
Having no other experiences, the prisoners
But
mistake these dancing illusions for reality, categorizing them and assigning them names, erroneously believing that they are discerning, tangible entities. You can see where Plato is going with this. Unexpectedly, one prisoner's shackles are removed, and he is thrust into the world beyond the cave for the very first time. The moment is ripe for him to be tested. The intense brilliance of the sunlight initially hurts his eyes, and the unfamiliar environment bewilders him. When confronted with the fact that his former perception of reality was merely a distorted illusion, and that the things he now sees around him are the real objects, he starts to suffer, his previous reality being deconstructed before his very eyes. The mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original size.
it's a very interesting way of putting it.
The
Wow. Yeah, I
shadows he
like
was
that.
familiar with appeared much more vivid to him. However, as time progresses, his eyes slowly adapt to the overwhelming brightness, and his suffering slowly passes as he gets accustomed to his new perspective. Gradually, he starts perceiving
It's like the reverse Gollum.
reflections in shimmering water bodies, progresses to observing objects directly.
I'm pretty sure they're making a movie about Gollum. Like it's not. There's only like at least in the Lord of the Rings, there's only like a handful of pages about his. Like I don't know how you're gonna make it into a movie.
And finally, he dares to gaze at the radiant sun, the ultimate source of light that illuminates everything he has been observing. Emboldened by his newfound understanding, the prisoner makes his way back to the cave, intending to share his revelations with the other prisoners. However, having grown accustomed to the light, he now finds the cave's darkness disorienting and struggles to discern the once familiar shadows on the wall. The other prisoners, misconstruing his disorientation, surmise that his journey into
This drawing.
the outer world has left him imbecilic and blinded, thereby rebuffing his attempts to liberate them vehemently.
So the whole point of the cave allegory is it's you can liberate yourself, but you can't convince others because people will lie and see the truth. And this is the difficult problem that every philosopher, every person that's trying to enlighten other people face is that you can't help others, you have to help yourself, and you have to have the other peoples try to help themselves. And like when I first started like studying stuff, when I first started like researching and trying to think of things in a different way and try to explore different philosophies and apply them to my life, it was very difficult to like face the fact that like I would tell people what they should do and they would get pissed off at me and like you don't help others unless they ask you for help. And that's one of the hardest lessons I ever had to learn because I feel like I alienated so many people because I would be like, oh, you just do this, you just do this, you just do this. And it's like, I'm giving them the right advice, but they're not asking for it. So they're not going to, I'm just wasting my time. This is so relevant to your current situation. This is just life in general, dude. Plato's cave allegory is forever the representation of existence because our entire lives are just an amalgamation of our perception. Everything that you've seen, everything that you experience, everything that you do goes to shape the world as you see it, and vice versa for other people. So Plato's cave allegory just explains why debate will never solve anything because one person sees the world and the truth in a certain way, and another person sees the world and the truth in another way, and it's just a clashing of ideas, and it's never going to get anywhere.
Plato presents this passage as an intricate metaphor, symbolizing the predicament of a philosopher tasked with enlightening the masses.
I like. I don't think he goes far enough with this. I think this is every experience in general. I'm not sure where the Platonic idea of forms comes from. We all learn this lesson in life at some point, yeah. I mean, it's fascinating that Plato was able to like this is where you kind of have a real appreciation for the older philosophers because they just this is an idea that's reiterated time and time again in philosophy. Sorry, I'm looking something up. Okay, yeah, this is okay. So, roughly speaking, this is Plato's idea of forms. I just want to make sure before I said it, and he didn't say it in a different way.
He
But
asserts that
basically,
most people
Plato
not only
believed the
find solace in
world's,
their ignorance,
I don't know why I played it. Plato believed the world to be more than appearance, or what we can see. And this is an idea that's like still being debated till today. Um, then you have the other side of this, which is the Aristotelian idea of forms, which is that things just are, that there is an isness, that you can quantify things, that things are only their appearance.
but also exhibit hostility towards those who challenge their preconceived notions. There are many ways in which one can interpret Plato's allegory of the cave, each perspective having its own profound teachings. After all, this is what an allegory is all about. Reflecting on real-world events, Socrates, Plato's mentor, was condemned to death by the Athenian government in the same way that the freed prisoner was attacked by the cave dwellers. His crime was the disruption of societal order by questioning prevailing.
So really, Plato was taken out because he was no oh, essentialism. I don't know what that term is. I thought you were saying existentialism. I don't like Aristotle. I think he's boring. So I haven't studied him enough. I don't even know what essentialism means, but give me a quick definition. Um, really what Socrates was taken out for was he was open and he was perceptive and he was forcing the youth of Athens to question things for the first time ever. And why are we fighting these wars? Why are we doing these things? Why are we sacrificing our lives for the sake of people that don't really like us? And that's really why he was taken out. That everything has an essence.
Norms. So, to fully comprehend
Norms.
the allegory of the cave, it's vital to
Oh yeah, that's
situate
the
it within its
Aristotelian idea of forms.
historical
That's what I was just
context
saying. Yeah.
and connect it to the broader philosophical tenets espoused by Plato. Emerging from a period marked by vibrant intellectual inquiry and cultural development in Athens, Plato's allegory encapsulates his metaphysical and epistemological viewpoints, deeply influenced by his mentor Socrates. Around the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece, and particularly Athens, was seen as a hub of intellectual innovation and discourse. This era, often called the Golden Age of Athens, saw a proliferation of philosophical inquiry into
Like I feel like we always like, was Athens ever that great? Were any of these societies ever that great?
Areas such as ethics, metaphysics, and epistemology.
Ethics. Do you know what they did to little boys there? Like, it's so funny that like all of like, if you read Symposium, like half of it's devoted to like very gross stuff. Like I'm just like I could barely get through it. It's like it's so weird that Western morality comes from these beliefs. Even Christian morality to a sense, because the Bible was infused with these sorts of ideals.
In the midst of this intellectual climate, Socrates propounded philosophical methods emphasizing critical thinking and logical argumentation, upsetting the powers in charge. While Socrates never recorded his thoughts, his philosophy and dialectical method are reflected in the works of his student Plato.
We don't even like there's some accounts of Socrates from different sources. So like I don't know, I maybe there's another Cato. It's another really famous philosopher that talked about Socrates. So it's not just Plato. But what we know about Socrates mostly comes from Plato and his dialogues. And I don't know if he emphasized things. I don't know if he dramatized things. Like, who knows if that's exactly what he was actually like, or if it's just Plato's own beliefs. Plato needs a resurrection so he can lecture at no. Why does he need a resurrection? What's your point?
Plato's philosophical worldview is primarily documented in his dialogues, where he explores various philosophical questions through the voice of Socrates and other characters. The Republic, which contains the allegory of the cave, is one of his most significant works.
I've had this book for like a year and I haven't read it yet. Plato's another one of those names where very interesting in theory, but not as exciting to read yourself. It sucks. There's so many like philosophies and beliefs that are like that. Um, Emerson's the opposite. Nietzsche's the opposite. I'm trying to think of other names where you just have to read them. Walden's nothing can recapture it. Blake is like that as well. I'm assuming Dante is going to be that way.
Focusing on justice and the ideal society. The allegory of the cave is nestled in the middle of the Republic,
Read books on
presented by
these philosophers.
Socrates as a
I don't want to like if the philosopher's boring, then the book is going to be even more boring. Like a lot of my understanding of these will come from people that I like reading. You know what I mean? Like one thing you'll read about very intellectual people is that they love to reference who they've read to kind of show you how smart they are. So like a lot of people have read Spinoza, even though there's not a lot of carryover to anything Spinoza would say. Just he's just one of those names where it's kind of like, oh, I read this guy. Like it's very weird.
metaphor illustrating his theory of forms. According to Plato, the empirical world we perceive with our senses is merely a world of appearances, a poor copy of the real world of forms or ideas. These
I mean, modern day physics just proves this. There's everything you see is not actually what it is because the atoms that comprise around you are just merely vibrating, which give the appearance of color. Like what we perceive, there's so much more.
forms are the eternal, unchangeable, perfect archetypes of the imperfect, transitory things we perceive in the world. The cave prisoners, chained and observing the shadows on the wall, symbolize humanity's predicament in the empirical world, misled by illusions and false appearances. The freed prisoner represents the philosopher or the enlightened individual who perceives the world of forms, gaining true knowledge. When he returns to the cave to enlighten others, he embodies the philosopher's responsibility to educate society, even in the face of resistance.
I feel like this is a quote because everyone thinks that they're this philosopher. Everyone thinks my world is right. It's like I think you missed the point there. I think there's no such thing as right. There's no such thing as anyone that's going to see the world exactly as you. And it's just what can we grasp from this? How can we understand this? And how can we come to terms?
or hostility. In this context, the allegory is a vivid encapsulation of Plato's philosophy.
This is where I see a lot of Nietzsche in this idea. Um, it's funny because Nietzsche hated Plato. He hated every philosopher except Epicurus, Heraclitus, and uh, Emerson. Those were the only three off memory I can think of that he enjoyed reading. He liked Faust too. Everyone liked Faust though. Um, but basically, one of one of the hardest hitting statements from Nietzsche is that all morality is contradictory because everyone thinks that they're doing it and they have some sort of justification for it and that their way of things is right. But you know, to get the freedom you wanted, you had to use some sort of force on other people. Like there's always a rule with that with there's no exception without a rule. I am not able to speak right now. I'm so hungry. I might have to end this very soon.
Philosophical ideas, a profound meditation on the nature of reality, the pursuit of truth, the philosopher's role, and the transformative power of knowledge. Turning from the philosophical landscape of ancient Greece to its rich mythological tapestry, we encounter a narrative bearing remarkable parallels to Plato's cave allegory, the myth of Prometheus.
Not really. I don't see it. I think they're different archetypes. I think Plato's ideas talking about the nature of reality where the hero myth is a little different. Because the Promethean myth is very similar to the Faustian bargain, very similar to the life of Jesus, very similar to Gilgamesh, very similar to Zarathustra. It's these themes are all recurring. Um, you can make an argument that they're the same. You can make an argument that they're different. It's
This tale, steeped in ancient lore, recounts how the Titan Prometheus, whose name means forethought, rebelled against the gods to steal fire, a symbol of knowledge and civilization. Prometheus, an ally of the mortals, recognized their disadvantaged state in a world where the gods withheld vital
similar to Adam and Eve. Then, if it's fire,
knowledge. In an act of defiance and compassion, he stole fire from the gods and delivered it to humanity. Fire, in this context, symbolizes knowledge, enlightenment, and the spark of civilization. The critic
Frankenstein was originally called Prometheus or something like that, or New Prometheus. I can't remember. There's something about the Promethean myth that Mary Shelley.
element that elevated humans from a state
My
of
brain's not
primal
working anymore.
vulnerability to becoming creators and innovators in their own right. This act of knowledge transference has clear echoes of the journey undertaken by the freed prisoner in Plato's allegory of the cave. The prisoner, upon discovering the world beyond the cave, returns
He's just repeating stuff now. This is interesting. Go check out this video. Check out this channel after school. Very very good channel. Has some very interesting stuff. We've talked about it a lot. But yeah. With that said, I think I'm gonna end the stream now. I'm like my stomach's like rumbling. I can barely focus, and I don't think I'm saying anything of interest anymore. So love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.